Yo,
Ya vamos a empezar a grabar. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. ¿Cómo está? No, perdón, Attorney General, Attorney David, no, sorry,
District Attorney.
District Attorney
George Marquez.
George Marquez está aquí con nosotros. Muchas gracias por su tiempo. La verdad, se lo agradezco de todo corazón. All right, let's start recording.
definitely. So we are live today with Mr. George Marquez, District Attorney of Imperial County. So first, I want to just go over the name, where we're from, and what we're doing.
My name is George Marquez. I'm the elected district attorney of Imperial County. Was elected in November of 2022, was sworn in January of 23. Grew up in El Centro, moved here when I was 9 years old, born in Los Angeles. I got here to start a business, went to Central Union High School, went to IBC, went off to college in the San Diego area. Worked in the LA, Orange County area, and then eventually I came back here to work as a deputy district attorney. I worked there for about 9 years as a deputy district attorney. Then I worked as a public defender on the other side for about 3.5 years, and I was elected when I was actually a public defender.
You know what? That's fantastic that we bring that up right off the gate, because my first question from the crowd actually is, why did you become a district attorney?
Because as a district attorney, you have the power to really make change in your community as it relates to criminal justice. And I think that's something that is needed, is a balanced view of our criminal justice system. So we have to make sure we keep our community safe by going after those people who pose a danger to our community. But there's also times when you can work with certain people who deserve a chance.
Excellent. So to that point, not just everybody can do this job. I wouldn't give this job to just anybody out there. What made you continue this career pathway? Do you feel that it came from the inside out or from the outside in, maybe?
No, I think it came from inside of me, definitely. This is something that one day I asked myself a question, what I wanted to do with my career. I already had been practicing law for many years. And the thought of running for DA actually entered my mind. And I felt it internally that it was something that I wanted to do. I started looking into it and what I had to do, which meant I would have to run a political campaign to get to the position. But it came from inside of me, and I know this is what I was saying.
Excellent. This is the type of things that we in terms of finding our identity in the Imperial Valley, I think we're all ready to be on fire, right?
Yeah.
What do you, whenever I speak those things, like what comes to mind in terms of getting active with the community, or in better yet said, what do you wish for the future of the Valley as a community at whole?
Well, the Valley has many needs. You know, I grew up here. I was just an average kid in Imperial County. And I'd like to see improvements in our criminal justice system. I'd like to see more opportunities here for some of our San Diego State graduates. And that's important for me. The criminal justice aspect is very important.
The involvement that you mentioned as from coming from within, I'm a strong believer that everybody on this campus as well has this burning sensation to be involved with the community. What kind of steps do you recommend based off of your experience growing up in the Valley? What do you recommend for someone to start now?
I think you have to start becoming aware of the issues that are in your community, because you can't really make a difference until you educate yourself as to what's going on. Once you educate yourself what's going on, then you can start taking proactive steps as to how you're going to make a difference, whether it's your career or getting involved in volunteer work, some facet of it.
From the university perspective, I see a lot of involvement in terms of food, water, possibly clothing, such and so forth. There's things like the Brown Bag Coalition from the PPGA, such and so forth. If we were to talk about some things that we can address more in terms of like problems for the Valley, what should we work on?
Well, if you're talking from, it depends on what perspective you're talking about. If you're looking at it from a economic perspective, we have high unemployment rates here. We need more opportunities for our youth. There's actually a lot of gang involvement here. We need to work with kids so that they're not involved in gangs. And the way to do that is to just try to find activities for them so they don't get involved with those kids. There are certain crime rates, there's high drug rates here. There's a lot of fentanyl use, etc. There's just a lot.
To that point, I recognize that as well. Other clubs on campus have been involved in getting free Narcan and other products in this, and we're talking about drugs, right?
Yes.
For the community. Now, how would one get, let's say, not educated, but informed on this topic if they're not on a university campus?
Almost any law enforcement agency, if you contact them, can help you out and guide you in that regard. You can contact our office and I can send somebody out here. They can do a presentation for you and they can educate you guys how you can get Narcan, how you can administer it, and the dangers of drugs in general. Because right now, what we're seeing is, I grew up in the 80s. I just gave away my age, but the drugs back then are very different from the drugs now. The drugs now are extremely dangerous, potent, and they can kill you with just a little bit.
Now, for anybody that's not aware of what we're talking about, these are some sensitive topics that, funny enough, Mr. Marquez, this does attack home. This attacks that firsthand experience and such and so forth. So these are things that can be placed on the tip of a needle, the tip of a toothpick or such and so forth that can be pushed into the community in the wrong ways. So if I were to bring it on back and we're talking about this gang activity in the Imperial Valley and kind of giving the youth something to look forward to, I personally think about art, music, and singing. But what should we see from the community? What should we ask from them in terms of reciprocation to get where we need to go on maybe things like that, or a community kind of bring together? How can we set up a meeting or something?
I think there needs to be stronger initiatives to help those kids that are at risk. So there's a lot of, we could look at stats at kids who are at risk, single parent household, things like that. If they've had any type of record in the past, that's an indicator that they might go towards a gang or things like that. There are certain indicators that we can look for, and we need to focus programs directly at those kids to try to deviate them from a life of crime. Because what happens is once they start going into that direction, it becomes increasingly difficult to get them out. And I will tell you that once they become 18, the difference between a 17-year-old and 18-year-old isn't that much. But once a kid turns 18, if they commit a crime, and then goes on their record, and if they want to get a job later on, it's going to affect them. And so that is a big problem, because a lot of times you have youth who, they live life, sometimes they're irresponsible and they're not thinking things through, and they make decisions that are going to have an impact for them for the rest of their lives. That is a problem.
Excellent, excellent. I'm gonna take this moment to take a breath of fresh air. We're gonna do a snapshot, okay? What's your favorite food?
My favorite, my family's from Sonora, so I love, my favorite food is caldo de queso.
Everybody who wants to throw a party and make some of that, we're gonna jot that down out to the side.
My mom's in particular, but she.
What music are we listening to nowadays?
I listen to a lot of classic rock, but I really enjoy jazz. I like mariachi, like sones, because my dad was a mariachi.
You kidding me?
Yeah, no, my dad was a mariachi, so I listen to a lot of sones, like mariachi vargas. I like listening to Miles Davis, jazz, and I like listening like even rock, Led Zeppelin and all that, Guns N' Roses, a lot of 80s.
I'm sorry. So for me personally, everybody that knows me being a fan, a big fan of music, what did your father play? What did he do? Talk to me a little bit about that real quick.
My father was a violinist. He started playing when he was about 6 or 7 years old in my grandfather's orchestra in Mexico. So he didn't get to go to school. He went to school 1 year, first grade, and then he was one of the oldest in his family, so he had to work in my father's orchestra, my grandfather's orchestra, to help provide for the other 11 siblings that were younger than him. And so he was actually born in Arizona, and during the Great Depression, they had to move back to Mexico, to a town called Alamo, Sonora. And in the early 60s, they moved back here to Los Angeles. My dad joined the trio, the 3 guitars, and he could sing and he played guitar, he played the violin, but he played the guitar. Then eventually he got picked up by a mariachi, and then he became the leader of the mariachi for about 20 years. And he was a violinist, and he was very good, had a beautiful voice. he loved music, and he loved tequila too.
They go hand in hand, don't they? So we're gonna do one last little section of our breath of fresh air. If I were to reach on out to anywhere in the country, possibly, right? I dream big, sir. If I were to reach out to anybody and bring a live artist to the Imperial Valley, who do we need here?
Oh, wow, and then Imperial Valley.
Yeah, any type of music. I mean, me personally, a lot of different stuff like Masigo and R&B and stuff like that. There's a lot of touring people that go north, south, east, and west, but they forget about the Imperial Valley, right? I think
Yeah.
everybody can agree that we kind of need a little bit more of that. I think
Yeah,
Brenton Wood was in at the casino. Rest in peace, right? Brenton
Yeah.
Wood was at this casino. Why didn't he stop by here?
you know, it'd be awesome here, and this is like, I like all kinds of music, you know, because I come from a very musical family. I would love, like, in terms of rock, I would like to see Morrissey here. I think that would be great.
Morrissey?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a Morrissey fan too.
I think we're gonna have to we're gonna have to send an email from one of these doctors over
Yeah.
here. Huh?
Or YouTube, or I like, rock en español too,
They fun is.
Caifanes. I saw him in concert twice when they were
I saw him in Coachella.
Caifanes.
Yeah, yeah.
And, Manas pretty good. I like Caifanes more, actually.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, growing up in LA, did you by chance ever get to see the scene out there with the music scene?
Well, I didn't, I went to college in San Diego and went to law school in Orange County. Every now and then I would go to concerts. There was a place that when my dad would go into area, because I have brothers and sisters that lived there, well, and they're moving there to build their careers there. So we used to go see mariachis, we used to go see Los Camperos, which were in Los Angeles. I had an uncle with a campero in the sixties. And then we'd also, Mariachi Sol de Mexico, we'd see them. Back then they were in El Monte. It was a restaurant. We used to go see them when my dad was there. And my dad actually got to play the violin with Mariachi Sol. They allowed him to play like La Negra, one song.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Talk about stunning. Me personally, I'm very involved in the music scene and I'm an advocate for putting instruments back in hands. I want to get active with that and use it as a form of expression. So talking about expression and how we kind of grew up in the Valley, as a Chicano, how was your experience here in the Valley? So far, what has it been and what are some things that we can bring to light?
I think it was amazing because I think that as a Chicano here in the Valley, well, you essentially growing up with two cultures, you know, and then we live by the border to boot, you know, so my experiences from a family, a mother and father who grew up from Sonora, Mexico, and living there in El Centro. Like we used to spend our Sundays going to Mexicali bowling. I'd go to Mexicali, get a haircut. So like Mexicali was a part of our lives. Like we used to go over there like to buy boxes of soft drinks or Fantas, you know, or Cokes, to go eat. So it was, I think, being a Chicano here and Imperial Valley, being on a border community, was a pretty amazing experience.
I love it.
Yeah.
And funny, you know, I'm not laughing at the situation. I just got my haircut in Mexicali just recently. So let's bring this to, was there any difficulties or obstacles that you want to talk about that you faced on your journey to become the DA of Imperial County?
Well, there are several. First of all, if you go way back, you need to get your bachelor's degree and you need to go to law school and you take the bar exam. Then you need to work as a lawyer and you need to build your reputation so it's strong enough so that you're a viable candidate to run for office, because if not, nobody's going to vote for you. You're not going to get the support that you need. But I'd say the biggest obstacle was actually the campaign itself, because when I came out and decided I was going to run for office, the sitting DA at that time, Gilbert Otero, had been there about 28 years. And so here I was, a public defender, didn't really have any backing. And I had decided I was going to take on this legendary political figure in Imperial County. And so that was the biggest challenge. And having the courage to do that and to be able to follow through with that, even though at times during the campaign, quite frankly, it seemed like it was going to be impossible. But I learned a lot about myself and I learned a lot about life and reaching this goal.
I love it. A lot of things that I'm seeing on campus nowadays is we want, for the most part, a portal from being a student to having our career, right? And if we can look through the lens and kind of look back on ourselves as we were growing up, what are some final thoughts on making that step from becoming a student to becoming a professional? I know we touched about this right here, but if I could get 3 quick bullet points, possibly resume, shaking hands, what am I looking for?
Well, definitely your resume, you wanna network with people. But I'm gonna tell you something that's not really what you're probably expecting to hear, you know? It's, a lot of it is, the way you think. You have to be very positive, you have to envision yourself and wherever you wanna be. Because if you can't see it inside yourself, you don't believe it inside yourself, you're not gonna make it. I mean, it's that simple. You have to see yourself succeeding, you have to see yourself doing certain things for you to get to that point. And I will say that a lot of people who go to the university, like a lot of students here, they're motivated, you know, they're motivated individuals, that's why they're in college to begin with. But a lot of times you just need that little extra, and that little extra comes from inside yourself. And you have to believe in yourself, and you have to be willing to follow through on whatever goals you have and make it happen.
Yes, I love that. So in terms of, let's say, entry level, let's just pretend we're in a room full of everybody that's looking for entry level jobs. Where would we be going? What would we be looking at? What organizations can be named in this context?
So, in criminal justice, I always give my students this advice, and because criminal justice and many times, many different fields are very broad. So to me, it's very important to get your foot in the door, get your foot in your door somewhere. So I tell some of my students, for example, they want to be CHP or they want to be customs. But I tell them, you know what, why don't you start off at the local sheriff's office? Get your foot in the door in law enforcement. They're gonna do a background. You're gonna learn how to do patrols. You're gonna learn how to do the skills, you're gonna learn the skills that you need to get to the job that you want. Maybe you want to be a marshal or whatever. Get your foot in the door, get that experience. Don't waste time. Okay? That's something that's very valuable, time. So use your time wisely, make it work for you, get the experience that you need to get to where you want to go, but never lose sight of where you want to go. Sometimes in life, another opportunity might open up and you might say, you know what, my goal has now changed. There's a better opportunity over here. And you might decide to go in that direction. And that's perfectly fine. Okay? So just think about those things and always keeping in mind the positive thinking that it needs to be successful. You will not see somebody who's successful who thinks negative. It just, those people do not exist. The people who are most successful are people who are determined, who know they have to overcome barriers, and who have the right frame of mind.
Perfect. That brings me to my next question. I personally actually thought about doing dispatch across all different places, right? And I thought about it. What does this job require? There's a lot of emotional stress. There's a lot of work stress, and there's stress in general, really. I don't know which other way to take this, right? How can a student mentally, maybe physically prepare to think about these these career paths, right? How can we prepare for what's out there?
So you gotta kind of, it helps if you talk to somebody who's in the profession, so they can kind of tell you what it's gonna be like. And I have people who want to be prosecutors and they come to me and they tell me, hey, what's it like? And I give them advice. And you touched on something that's very important. A lot of these jobs, they are stressful. So how do you succeed in a job that's stressful, that is stressful? You do the things you love doing. You know, I like going for walks at 5:30 in the morning and seeing the sun come up with my dog. That relaxes me. I like watching Dodger games in my patio. You know, I like playing with my kids.
We got
All
a
those things.
everybody, huh?
Yeah. Anyway, we're doing well right now. Hopefully we'll win tonight. But it's for each person, it's different, you know, and I do believe in the balance of life. I believe everything in life has a balance or should have a balance. And if something for you to function at optimal performance, you need to make sure that everything in your life is balanced. So if you're working, you need another side to that that's going to help make you a better employee, or it's going to help you in your career in some way.
I love that. So this is coming from our vice president of Chicanx and Fronteras, Ms. Melania Ramos. She asked, what is the most difficult part of your job and how do you handle them? I know we touched a little bit right now, but let's say if we were to turn that into maybe a weekend away, how do we handle this?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts to my position. Sometimes the most difficult part is telling people bad news, you know, that quite frankly. Sometimes we have cases that we gotta speak to victims and we gotta tell them things they don't wanna hear, but it's our ethical duty to be honest and to be upfront with them about everything. The stakes are high in our profession. And we have to make very difficult decisions, even on cases. Sometimes we charge a case, sometimes we reject a case. But regardless of our decision, somebody's gonna be impacted. If we decide to go forward on a case, the defendant and probably his family is gonna be drawn into our criminal justice system. They're gonna be impacted. If we reject a case and the victim and their family are gonna be impacted. We have to make very difficult decisions on a daily basis. It's part of our job, it's part of what we do, and I think that's one of the most difficult aspects of it.
To that note, the quality of ethics is something that stood out to me. The next question that our vice president has is, how would a day in the life of an intern be in your office?
So essentially, I have an intern coordinator, it's one of the supervising attorneys. And he works with our interns. He would essentially give you work. You might review a case with a prosecutor. You might go to court with a prosecutor. You might help somebody prepare for trial, look over notes, summarize things, things like that. Obviously, with the supervision of an attorney, so you'd be working hand in hand with an attorney. That's the way we like it.
Right out the gates, we get right on into it. I love
Yeah.
it. So you mentioned issues in the valley, but out of the many, which one do you think needs the most attention aside from drug issues? Just for right now.
So, are you talking in reference to criminal justice or?
Yes,
Um,
correct? Yes.
well, that's a broad question. So right now, we have a lot of DUI cases. Yeah, a lot of DUI cases here in the valley. And sometimes what happens is, people drink and drive and they end up crashing and killing someone. And so what ends up happening, and this happens to a lot of youth, if you get a first time DUI, you're gonna have to pay the consequences, etc. But if you get a second DUI and you're in an accident and somebody gets killed, you're gonna be charged for murder, and that carries a potential life sentence. And that's something that that we need to educate more people on, so they're aware of the risks of drinking and driving. Drinking and driving is still a big problem.
All right. So warning, okay? I personally have lost two friends. Those were in high school. A relative of mine that is extremely close that we think about every day to these causes, right? To these circumstances we're talking about. What advice would you give families here in the valley to push through these difficult times, especially with topics in terms of DUIs?
If they've been a victim, like for example, they lost a loved one, obviously there's resources out there. We have a victim witness department in our district attorney's office that can help guide people through that. But at the same time, I think it's very important to stay close to your loved ones and get that support from each other, because you lose somebody, it's like having a big void inside of you. And the only way to try to fill that void is by being with people you love. And also from a criminal justice perspective, it's making sure the case is prosecuted. So you want to, like, if it's a case that's in the system, you want to make sure you're keeping up to date with any updates of the case when it's going to court. You want to speak to the victim witness advocates in our department to make sure you're educated as to what's going on. We developed actually a system in our office where now our victims in certain cases, they now get text message updates on the cases. So if the case is going to court, they'll get a text message. There's a portal now they can log into in the computer, and they'll get updates on their cases as well. So that's something that I developed when I came into office. And it's something that I thought was needed for the victims of our community.
Personally, I think we can all agree that being a DA, being the district attorney of Imperial County is your passion, right? So I think we're both coming from the sense of like this inside out perspective of what internally brings us out to the externalities of the communities and how we need to bring forth a forward moving action to be better for ourselves, better for the valley, and taking movements on that. To this point, our students ask, since you mentioned about children joining gangs, getting into drugs, do you think placing more libraries or cleaning playgrounds for these children in terms of like activities or community involvement would be good for them? Is there things like that that maybe we can kind of push on towards the youth or really anybody to get involved? What would we recommend?
So my perspective on that is I see a lot of these kids who go into gangs. A lot of them are simply looking for an identity. They might be a little bit lost in life, and they see these gangs as giving them an identity, and they give them like a brotherhood or a sisterhood. And so we need to find ways of filling that gap where the gangs fill in, and we got to get to the kids before they do. So a lot of times, if some kids are good at baseball and they can do it for baseball and they can do it for sports, but there are kids who go into that one maybe not be good at sports. So different clubs and different organizations help. There was a program in bigger cities. I think we had it here some years back as a big brother, big sister program, and that's a mentoring program for youth. So it's something I always wanted to be involved in, but I haven't done it, to be frank with you. But I think it's something that, for example, if you have somebody who's a responsible member of the community and they want to mentor a youth, maybe take them out for some pizza or a burger, take them out for a baseball game and just hang out, and give that kid some advice on life, because that's what they need. Some of them don't have a strong father figure, or they may not even have a father figure at home. And so things like that, I think, are needed more in our community.
Perfect. Now, to that note, we got about a 5 to 10 minute window, so we're going to cut this down to a little snapshot one more time. But on the same pathway that we have going right now, did you ever face discrimination growing up as a Chicano, right? This dual identity, and how did we work with it? And let's kind of pass this message on to these children that we're speaking of, this youth.
Yeah, well, I'm sure I did, but I never really paid attention to it. I never paid attention to it because I've always been a person who always thought of the positive, positive things in life. So if something's not working or somebody is treating you bad, I don't pay attention to that. I focus on my goal and where I'm going. And that's the way I look at life even to this day.
And that's a powerful message that I think that everybody needs to just kind of listen to a few times on over, if you ask me. So to that note, we have a couple of questions from this side of the room in regards to the most rewarding aspect of your profession, right? So the first part is going to be, what's the most rewarding aspect of your profession? And then as well, we're gonna go on the opposite side of that. What is one of the most, maybe not toughest decisions? I don't want to get too detailed, but what's one of the most toughest things, if we can wrap that around again, and how would we manage it, right? So once again, it's what's the most rewarding aspect and what's the opposite of that? What's the most opposite end of?
Well, I'll tell you, I feel like I'm helping my community like a way I never have before. And why is that? Because I always I see myself as a very balanced person in the way I view things. And I think the criminal justice system as a whole needs to be balanced. You need a balanced approach to it. So I feel like my upbringing here in the Valley is indicative of things here. So I was just a regular Valley kid, and now I'm the district attorney, and I feel like I'm giving back to my community in ways I never ever dreamed of before. And I believe I'm just getting started. I think there's more initiatives that I'm starting that I have my eye on, and you'll see them in a couple of years. We'll go into details on that.
No, definitely. To that note, from the inside out, I'm feeling it. Mr. Marquez, I want to give this extension to you. I, Julian Daniel, I'm a megaphone for the community as well as this class here, and I feel everything that we're speaking. I got the chills down my beard right now. I'm genuinely ecstatic to have you here. It was a pleasure. Everybody, George Marquez, Imperial County District Attorney. Sorry about that. We got too much questions.
Well, we can clap one more time.
Yeah, definitely. Hold your horses now. Listen, what is the advice that you would like for us to provide to others as student leaders? In terms of like maybe social media or hand to hand, what's some advice that we can give, short and sweet?
Well, as it relates to social media, watch what you put on there. Okay, in this day and age, you gotta be very careful with your words. And you have to think things 2 steps ahead in life. And also, like, you're young right now, don't let anything that you put out there come back and haunt you later. So be very respectful of people, do it in a professional manner. And know at the end of the day, the reason why you're here is because you want a career. You want to be able to pursue your career. And you don't want anything that's going to be an impediment to that. So be careful what you say. That's my advice.
Beautiful. Now, for our last question, sir. We will advocate for bringing the involvement, but how would we handle the various challenges such as gangs and drinking in terms of lack of activity? In terms of what's available in the Imperial Valley? Now, to kind of brush this more, you always hear a lot of people wanting to go north, south, east, and west, but never keep it in the valley. So in terms of activity, how can we advocate for involvement?
We all need to, the thing is, San Diego State students here, you guys are all going to be leaders in this community. You're doing the right thing, you're getting educated. And as leaders, we need to create opportunities for our youth. It's that simple. It's not just one person, it's not just one leader, it has to be all of us. Everybody in this room has the potential to be a great leader. I truly believe that. But you have to believe in yourself, you have to believe in your community, and further, you have to love your community. You have to love this community. I've lived in different places. I lived in Los Angeles when I was a kid, went away for college, came back to the Valley. I'll tell you, there's no better place to live than Imperial Valley. I loved living here. And you have to love your community and you have to want to improve your community. So always think of ways you can do it. Think of ways how we can help our youth get out of these situations.
Excellent. To that final note, be involved, be empowered, and be proud that you're from the Imperial Valley. Once again, everybody, please.
And believe in yourself. Believe in yourself.
And believe in yourself, everybody. Fantastic, man. Open questions, if anything, guys, we're short on time.
Just real quick, I remember when I went off to college, I got a letter from my mom. My mom was a devout Catholic, you know, she's typical Mexican, like the grandma, like Juanita, with a rosary in her hand. Always praying with the rosary, you know, she was always praying for me. I mean, I don't know that, it must tell you something about me. But anyway, I remember she wrote me a letter when I went off to Cal State San Marcos many years ago. And she wrote it in Spanish, obviously. And at the end, she said, "Si se puede." That was the phrase that she told me, "Si se puede." And remember I told you about how you think and your frame of mind? It's part of what you gotta believe. You gotta believe in yourself. You gotta believe that you can do it. All right? And I'm living proof of that, by the way. So just remember that.
Good, thank you, everybody.
Mr. Marquez, I have a question for you, something that I feel that you touched on, and youth and whatnot, and due to our recent increase in crime, and I'm gonna focus especially in the city of Brown. I always say that there's a lack of funds going towards youth sports, which many times we
Sports, yeah.
which we know that is a lot of time, you can, like, children going to gangs because of brotherhood. Sports is many times what fills that gap. Say, well, my reason of coming back to school was because I wanna work with at-risk youth. How would I go, what avenue would I take, say, to be able to try to maybe apply, try to help, like, I'm gonna just speak about football. So football is a very expensive sport for kids to play. There's some kids that cannot afford that. That might be the one avenue to keep them off of the streets. What avenues can